Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another video of our Teaching English in Elementary Grades, in which we will be tackling about the language experience method with the Group 7 members, BBJ Muntimayor, Desiree F. Mangiran, Maria Kyle Villahermosa, Genebeth Rachel, Rhea Ansel Doa, and Marifaith Pacaldo. But before we dive into our topic, let us first take time to be motivated with this video. I hope you listen and gain insights with today's discussion.
Oh no! Where are the lights? I can't see them anymore. It feels like we have such a long way to go.
I know. But look how far we've come.
I just don't think I can do this. I'm never going to find a home.
You know, sometimes your mind plays tricks on you. It can tell you you're no good, that it's all hopeless. But I've discovered this. You are loved and important, and you bring to this world things that no one else can. So hold on.
Language Experience Method. The language experience method, or the language experience approach, it is a strategy to develop and reinforce reading and writing using personal experiences and students' own repertoire of knowledge. The students themselves initiate with their own experiences through projects and other resulting interactive activities. For example, going on a trip, seeing a movie, or looking at a picture. In their authentic language, students dictate their experiences to the teacher, who translates their story into written English. With this documentation as a basic material for reading and writing instruction, the teacher helps the students see the connection between what they signed and what was written. The teacher uses this language experience to develop new vocabulary, comprehension, and basics of English grammar. The history of the language experience approach. The language experience approach has its roots in the early 20th century, evolving from various philosophies and research findings. The early beginning. During the 1900s to 1940s. Progressive education movement. The language experience approach draws from the progressive education movement, which emphasized student-centered learning, hands-on activities, and the importance of personal experience. Also, we have the whole language philosophy. The whole language philosophy, which emerged in the 1930s, also influenced the language experience approach. This approach focused on the integration of reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills. Next is the development and refining during the 1950s to 1970s. We have the Ashton-Warner's organic approach. In the 1950s and 1960s, Sylvia Ashton Warner developed the organic approach, which emphasized the use of students' personal experiences and interest in reading instruction. This approach laid the groundwork for the language experience approach. Also, the research and expansion. During the 1960s and 1970s, researchers like Kenneth Goodman and Yetta Goodman further developed and refined the language experience approach. They emphasized the importance of student-centered learning, authentic tests, and the integration of language skills. Lastly is the modern applications. During the 1980s to present, the whole language movement. The whole language movement of the 1980s to 1990s further popularized the language experience approach, emphasizing the importance of authentic text, student-centered teaching, and the integration of language skills. And also, the current practices. Today, the language experience approach continues to evolve, incorporating new technologies, diverse text, and culturally responsive teaching practices. It remains a widely used approach in language arts education, emphasizing the importance of student-centered learning, personalized experience, and authentic language use. Language experience, a method. Language experience approach is a method actually uses students' own words to help them read. For example, your students may draw a picture of dad in a car. In that case, you would write underneath the drawing, "Dad is in the car." You continue to collect drawings from your students, mix and write a short sentence underneath each drawing. Like for example, a picture of a playground would read, "We went to the playground." When you've collected enough pictures, you make them into a book for your students to read again and again. Write underneath the drawing a description your students gives for drawing. This way, your student will remember much better what is written. Some people use this method as a first approach to reading. This, in order to help their student understand that what they have drawn and what you have written is a form of communication between the student and yourself. The language experience approach supports children's concept development and vocabulary growth, while offering many opportunities for meaningful reading and writing activities through the use of personal experiences and oral language. Teachers apply the language experience approach in many different ways, but there are certain things that are present most of the time. That is why we are going to talk about the features of the language experience approach. These are the materials are learner-generated, literacy skills are integrated, literacy levels are determined by the learner's own language use, and learning and teaching are personalized, communicative, and creative. The first feature is the materials are learner-generated. Students create their own passages from which they learn to read and write. In a group of beginning learners, a student will tell a teacher what to write, and then the teacher will write it down, errors and all. Later, students will write out their own passages. For example, Teacher Alexandra might ask her students to write out a memory of their favorite vacation. The students who are not proficient at writing yet might tell Teacher Alexandra what their favorite vacation were, and she will write down exactly what they say. Other students might write it down themselves. The second feature is literacy skills are integrated. There are 4 general communication skills: the reading, writing, listening, and speaking. In the language experience approach, all 4 of these skills are linked. In connection to the example of the first feature, The memoirs about the students' favorite vacations are a good example of integrating literacy skills. As they are writing, of course, students are practicing writing, but later, these memoirs could be shared with other students to use for reading practice. Further class discussions of the memoirs could promote listening and speaking skills. The third feature is literacy levels are determined by the student's language use. Unlike in some other literacy programs, the teacher does not decide to teach certain vocabulary words or grammar rules. Instead, the difficulty of vocabulary and grammar is wholly defined by the student themselves as they use certain words and sentence structures. For example, perhaps teacher Alexandra asks students to write about what their perfect meal would be. She is prompting them to use a specific verb case by having them write, for example, that the meal would be this or would be that. However, the students may choose to write their essays in a different way by describing that their meal is this or that instead. Either way, teacher Alexandra won't press them to use a specific tense, but let them determine what they are ready for. The fourth and the last feature is learning and teaching are personalized, communicative, and creative. The approach encourages students to draw upon their personal experiences and interest in language learning. Learning and teaching are inherently personalized as each individual has unique experience, backgrounds, and learning styles that shapes their understanding. This personalization allows educators to tailor their approaches, ensuring that students engage with material in ways that resonate with them. Communication plays a crucial role, fostering dialogue between teachers and students, which enhances comprehension and encourages critical thinking. Creativity is essential in both learning and teaching, as it inspires innovative problem solving and makes the educational experience more engaging.
So now let us proceed with the language experience as a teaching method. So the language experience approach is a teaching method that integrates a student's personal experiences with literacy development. So it is a natural approach to teaching reading and writing that is especially useful for early learners or those learning a new language. So the LEA or the language experience approach draws on students' spoken language to develop their reading and writing skills by focusing on the words or the experiences that are most meaningful to them. So, what you see on your screen are the key elements of this approach or the key elements of language experience approach, such as the personal experience, literacy instruction, community literacy, and service learning. And along with this are the references to educational theories like John Dewey, Edmund Huey, Higgins, and Herzberg. So now let us tackle the key elements of language experience approach. So the first key element of the language experience approach is the personal experience, which is referenced to John Dewey in 1938. So John Dewey is a key figure in progressive education who believed that learning happens best when it connects directly with an individual's life and experiences. So in the language experience approach, students dictate stories about their own lives. So these personal experiences are recorded and then transformed into written text. So Dewey's emphasis on experiences as a foundation for learning aligns perfectly with language experience approach. So why do you think it works? So students are naturally more invested in content that relates to them. So when students see their personal stories transformed into text, they begin to understand how abstract system of written language reflects real-world experiences. So this intrinsic connection fosters a deeper engagement with the reading process. The second key element of language experience approach is the literacy instruction, which is referenced to Huey in 1908. So, Dewey's foundational work on reading emphasizes the importance of literacy instruction. So, the language experience approach weaves structured literacy instruction into personalized content, allowing teachers to guide students through essential literacy skills such as word recognition, phonemic awareness, and comprehension, while using stories that students find familiar and meaningful. So, why do you think it works? So, by using a student's own words, the process feels less daunting as they are already familiar with the content. So, this method not only teaches the mechanics of reading but also strengthens comprehension since students already understand the context of the stories they are learning to read. Next is the Community Literacy by Higgins in 1995. So Higgins emphasizes that literacy is a communal activity that reflects the values and experiences of a community. So language experience approach naturally incorporates community literacy by encouraging students to share not only personal stories but also those of their families or local community, thus linking individual learning to a broader social and cultural context. So, this approach allows students to see literacy as a shared community activity rather than an isolated one. So, when students tell stories from their community or personal life, they are also learning how literacy connects them to the world around them. So, this shared experience makes the learning process more inclusive and culturally relevant. Last but not least key element of language experience approach is the service learning by Herzberg in 1994. So service learning is about engaging students in real-world problems and solutions while developing their skills. So in LEA or language experience approach, it focuses on personal experience aligns with service learning in that it brings real life stories into the classroom. So it allows students to reflect on their experiences and learn from them. So by engaging with their own stories and reflecting on their experiences, students are empowered. So they gain a sense of ownership over their learning and develop critical thinking and problem solving skills. So this reflection fosters not only the literacy skills but also a deeper understanding of their own lives and community. To sum it up, the elements highlighted in the language experience approach, such as the personal experience, literacy instruction, community literacy, and service learning, are essential because they represent a holistic way of engaging students in language learning. So, personal experiences, as emphasized by Dewey, allow students to connect their real world experiences with literacy, making learning more meaningful and relatable. Literacy instruction, as framed by Dewey, ensures that students receive structured teaching in reading and writing, reinforcing technical language skills with a personalized context. Community literacy emphasizes that literacy is a social practice, so it encourages collaboration and real world application of language in community settings. And finally, the service learning. It ties education to social responsibility, showing students how their literacy skills can be applied for the greater good. Together, these elements create a dynamic learning environment that makes language learning engaging, relevant, and inclusive, ultimately promoting both personal and academic development. So now let us proceed to the five-step process of LAE or Language Experience Approach. So each step in the language experience approach is meticulously designed to scaffold the student's learning process, which gradually leads them from spoken language to literacy proficiency. So the step 1, teacher and student discussion. So in this step, the teacher and student discuss a topic that is meaningful to the student. So this stage is crucial because it builds the rapport and trust between the student and the teacher. So the teacher uses this opportunity to guide the conversation towards a topic that can be expanded into a narrative. So this stage, it is where oral language skills are reinforced. So the student must organize their thoughts, expressing their ideas clearly, and articulate their personal experiences in a coherent manner. So this conversation helps build a strong foundation for both language development and cognitive skills such as sequencing and reasoning. So the teacher's role here is they must listen actively and steer the conversation in a way that encourages the student to reflect on their experiences while also challenging them to use descriptive language, proper sentence structure, and a variety of vocabulary. The step 2, student dictation. So here, the students dictates their story to the teacher who writes it down word for word. So this step is particularly empowering for students because they see their spoken words turn into written text, reinforcing the idea that their thoughts and words have value. So, by dictating their own words, students begin to understand the relationship between spoken and written language. So, this is especially useful for young children or those learning a new language, as they may be already comfortable speaking but find reading or writing more challenging. Another thing that dictated story becomes the student's reading material. So this personalizes the content, making it immediately meaningful and easier to comprehend. Step 3, repeated reading. So once the student's story is written down, they practice reading it multiple times. So repetition is a key element of language experience approach because it solidifies the connection between words and meaning, allowing students to build fluency and comprehension. So the repeated reading of a familiar story builds reading fluency because the students already knows what the story is about. So the challenge shifts from comprehension to word recognition and decoding, both of which are important steps in the reading process. So another thing, since the student is already familiar with the content, they can focus on improving their reading accuracy and fluency without being bogged down by trying to understand an unfamiliar text. So, step 4, word learning and reinforcement. So, in this stage, the teacher designs activities around the student's story to reinforce key literacy skills. So, these activities could involve breaking down the story into individual words, exploring phonics, vocabulary development, or sentence construction. So, teachers can focus on a specific area where the students needs improvement, such as phonemic awareness, sight word recognition, or vocabulary expansion. So activities might include flashcards, word games, or sentence reconstruction exercises. So the personalized nature of the text means that the students is more likely to remember and retain the words because they come from their own story. So this familiarity enhances retention and reinforces literacy skills such as spelling, grammar, and sentence structure. Last but not the least step is the step number 5, which is transition to other reading materials. So, as the students grow more confident in their ability to read their own stories, the teacher gradually introduces more complex reading materials from other authors. So, this transition helps students apply the skills they've learned through the language experience approach to a broader range of text. So, by first mastering the reading of familiar personal content, students gain the confidence they need to tackle unfamiliar text. So they begin to recognize the skills they've developed can be applied to any reading material. Another thing is, this step is critical for ensuring that students are not just limited to personal stories but are able to engage with more diverse texts that expand their vocabulary, comprehension, and critical thinking. To sum it up, the 5 step process in the language experience approach is important because it provides a structured yet flexible way to develop literacy skills through active engagement. So it begins with a teacher and student discussing a topic, ensuring the subject is meaningful and relevant to the student's experiences, which fosters motivation and strengthens oral language skills. The second step, where the students dictates their story, allows them to see how their spoken words can be transformed into written text, making the connection between speech and literacy clearer. And the teacher's transcription of the student's dictation serves as a model of accurate writing, helping students understand grammar and sentence structure. So when students read their own words, it builds their reading fluency and boosts confidence, as they are more likely to connect with and comprehend text that is based on their personal experiences. And finally, extension activities encourages a deeper comprehension, vocabulary growth, and further literacy practice. So this process transforms literacy learning into a personalized, enjoyable experience that empowers students to see their own voice reflected in written form.
Good morning to each and everyone. I am Maria Cavalier Hermosa and I will going to tackle about the theoretical support and the whole language approach. But first, let's talk about the theoretical support. So in the year of 1986, Jones noted that the basic approach to language experience approach, or LEA, as outlined in the five-step process, draws on several key language learning principles. So as you can see there on your screen, there is an image, right? So that image outlines the key principles of the language experience approach. So when we say language experience approach, again, it is a teaching method that connects language and personal experiences to improve literacy. Now, let's start explaining the image. So for the first key language principle, we have the learning occurs from the known to unknown, or a learning what we know. So it refers to that we understand new things better than we relate them to things we are already familiar with. So meaning when we're trying to learn something new, it is easier for us if we can connect it to the things we already understand. So here's an example. So if you're learning to read a new word, it helps if the word is similar to a word that you already know. It is because our brain builds on a familiar ideas. So relating the new information to past experiences, it makes it easier to understand and remember. So that is the first key language principle all about. Now let's proceed to the second key language principle, which is the learning occurs most effectively in general to specific direction, or learning goes general to specific. It refers to it makes us easier to grasp big ideas first and then focus on the smaller details. Next, we have the third key language principle, which is struggling adult readers usually have a low self concept, as readers need to be assured of some immediate success, or a struggling reader need confidence. So, adults who have trouble reading often feel bad about their reading skills. So, it is very important to them to have a small success to boost their confidence by offering them small, achievable tasks that allow them to experience success quickly. So, for example, starting with the simpler words they can manage, praising their efforts, and focusing on their progress. So, these small successes build their self esteem or self confidence and motivate them to keep trying. So, as they succeed in these smaller steps, they will feel more confident to take on bigger challenges. So, this steady progress helps reduce their fear or frustration with reading. So, that is the third key language principle all about. Now, let us proceed to the last key language principle, which is everyone reads at every language experience approach session, or everyone participates in reading during each language experience approach session. So, all learners should read, as practice is essential for improvement. So, that is the fourth key language principle all about. So these principles guide us on how the language experience approach, or LEA, helps learners feel more comfortable and successful in their reading journey. So that's it for the theoretical support, and now let's continue to the whole language. So, what is whole language? So, when we say whole language, it focuses on children making sense of skills used in reading and writing, as opposed to just memorizing letter sounds and symbols. So, that is the definition of whole language. So, as you can see there on your screen, again, there is an image, right? So, this image shows the four key skills that are essential in learning a language through the whole language. So again, they are all connected and important for language development. So these skills are, we have the speaking, writing, reading, and grammatical skills. So for the first skill, we have the speaking. So when we say speaking, it refers to being able to talk and express thoughts clearly in the language. So that is speaking all about. Second skill, we have the writing. So it refers to being able to write down ideas, stories, or information effectively. Third, we have the reading. Reading, it refers to understanding and interpreting written texts. Fourth, we have the grammatical skills, knowing the rules of the language, like sentence structure, verb tenses, and word order. Okay, so that's it for the four key skills of the whole language. So, in the whole language approach, these skills are taught together, not separately. So, this means learners are improved by using all the skills at once: speaking, reading, writing, and grammar through meaningful, real life communication. So, again, they are all connected and very important for language development. So, for this summarization, the whole language approach influenced by constructivist theory. Proponents of the whole language methodology believes that children draw from their perspective and prior experiences to the framework for new knowledge. Also, the language experience approach, or the LEA, is a whole language approach that promotes reading and writing through the use of personal experiences and oral language.
And now let us tackle on how do we most effectively adapt the language experience approach. So to effectively adapt the language experience approach, or LEA, it's essential to integrate strategies that make the process both engaging and accessible for students of various language levels. So there are key strategies that can be employed. So first one is providing input and easing pressure on students according to Wales 1994. So, in the early stages of learning, students might feel nervous or overwhelmed by the pressure to produce language. So, to adopt LEA, the teacher can provide the majority of input, such as modeling language and offering clear examples. So, for example, in a lesson about a field trip, the teacher can first describe the trip using simple language, such as: We saw birds, the sun was shining, we walked through the park. So, these examples gives students time to absorb the vocabulary and structure without needing to speak or write immediately. So, as students become more comfortable, they can gradually participate by adding their own words or sentences. Like, I saw a big tree. So, by taking the pressure off the student, the teacher allows them to focus on understanding and processing the input before actively engaging in output. So, this gradual release of responsibility helps students build confidence. So the second strategy is using picture or word cues, according to Rangel 1989. So pictures or word cues can help initiate conversation and provide a context for learning. So for example, if the topic is animals, so the teacher might show pictures of various animals, such as a lion, an elephant, and a bird. So the teacher asks the students to talk about them. So teacher could use a word cue like jungle to spark a discussion about where the animals live. So this make it easier for students to connect
ideas, expand their vocabulary, and link their personal experiences. For example, visiting a zoo or seeing animals on TV to language learning. So for younger students or beginners, pictures provide a visual connection, making abstract ideas more tangible and stimulating communication. So this approach is particularly effective in making abstract ideas more concrete and in encouraging participation from students of all levels. So the third strategy is incorporating cooperative learning. So cooperative learning involves students working together to achieve shared learning goals. So in the context of language experience approach, this could mean having students work in pairs or small groups to create a story based on a shared experience. So for example, after a class nature walk, students could work together to describe the walk. One student talks about the trees, another student about the weather, and the other students talks about the animals they saw. So this cooperative activity encourages students to use language actively, supports peer learning, and makes the process more interactive. So the teacher can guide the group, stepping in to offer a support when necessary. But students take ownership of the language they produce together. So this not only enhances learning but also fosters a sense of community and collaboration in the classroom. So, by incorporating these strategies, the language experience approach becomes more dynamic and adaptable, helping students engage deeply with language through personal experiences, which visual supports, and collaborative learning. So, this ensures a rich, student centered learning environment where language acquisition feels natural and meaningful. So the language experience approach or LEA can be expanded through follow-up lessons that focus on specific language skills such as grammar, lexicon or vocabulary, pronunciation, and spelling. So these follow-ups are crucial for helping students refine their language abilities after they have created and discuss a shared text or experience. So now let us talk about the first follow-up lesson, which is grammar. So language experience approach follow-up lesson on grammar involve using the students' shared experience text to teach specific grammatical structures. So since the text is based on the students' own words, they are more likely to relate to it. So for example, if students create a story about a field trip, the teacher can highlight sentences like, "We went to the park," to teach the past tense. So the teacher can then guide the students in identifying and correcting any grammatical errors in their text or introducing new grammar points. So activities could include rewriting sentences in different tenses or focusing on subject verb agreement. And now let us proceed to the second one, which is lexicon or vocabulary. So vocabulary lessons in language experience approach are deepening students' understanding of words used in the shared text and introducing new related terms. So since the words are already part of their experience, students are more likely to retain them. So teachers can build vocabulary lessons by exploring synonyms, antonyms, or word families. So students can also be asked to use the new words in different contexts. So like for example, if after discussing a nature walk, if students use the word tree, the teacher can introduce related words like forest, branches, leaves, or more specific terms like oak or pine tree. So, students can practice using these new words in sentences. And now let us proceed to the third one, which is pronunciation. So, pronunciation lessons follow language experience approach by focusing on the correct articulation of words from the shared text. Since students are using the language they have generated, it's easier to help them refine their pronunciation. Teachers can use oral reading, repetition drills, or phonetic exercises to correct pronunciation mistakes or introduce new sounds that might be challenging. So, listening activities and peer to peer reading can also correct, can also reinforce correct pronunciation. So, for example, if the students use the word animals in their story, the teacher could practice the pronunciation of the tricky vowel sounds and syllables. So the class could repeat the word in unison or break it down into smaller parts to perfect their pronunciation. So the last follow-up lesson is spelling. So spelling lessons in language experience approach can be directly tied to the words students use in their original stories. Since students are already familiar with the words, spelling instruction becomes more meaningful. So the teacher can create spelling lists based on the vocabulary from the shared experience or focus on correcting spelling errors from the text. Activities might include dictation, word sorting, or spelling games to reinforce the correct spelling of the frequently used words. Like, for example, if a class story includes the words like running, park, and friends, the teacher can provide these words as spelling words, and students can practice writing them in sentences or through spelling drills. So by following up language experience approach with these targeted lessons, students not only deepen their understanding of the language they generated, but also improve their overall linguistic competence in an integrated and contextualized way.
So good day everyone. My name is Rhea Anque Soldoa, and for today I will be discussing the LEA, or the Language Experience Approach. But before that, let us dig deeper on the definition of the LEA. LEA is an instructional strategy for teaching literacy, particularly for beginning readers, that builds on the student's own language and experiences. So how does LEA works? LEA works first, it offers a useful and effective method for beginning literacy instruction by linking the student's language and experience in learning. This means that LEA connects literacy instruction to the student's existing language and personal experiences. For example, a teacher might ask students to describe something they did or observed. These experiences are then written down by the teacher, and the students read back their own words. This approach helps students see the connection between spoken and written language. Next, it encourages students to explore, think, and talk. This means that LEA promotes active learning by encouraging students to think about their experiences, discuss them, and express them in their own words. This helps build both oral language skills and literacy. Next is language experience activities are often related to current topics or to students' own lives. This means that language experience activities are often centered on topics that are meaningful to the students, such as events from their lives, family, or community. This personal connection makes learning more engaging and relevant. So, overall, the LEA is a student centered method that makes learning to read and write more natural and meaningful as it builds on the language the student already knows. So, I will be giving the floor to the next reporter. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I am Mary Faith D. Pacaldo. Now, let's proceed to the role of the educator. In the language experience method, the educator plays an important role in fostering a supportive and engaging writing environment. By modeling the writing process and thinking aloud, the teacher will demonstrate how to articulate thoughts and ideas effectively by providing the students with a clear framework of their own learning and writing. The educator also introduces various writing genres through targeted mini lessons, helping students understand the different styles and purposes of writing. This exposure encourages creativity and versatility in the writing. The educator will emphasize how important of having a purpose for writing and understanding the audience, which cultivate a sense of relevance and motivation in students. They will instill a foundational skills that are crucial for effective communication. Now we have here five role of the educators. The first one is to model the writing and the thinking aloud process. This one it means that the educator actively demonstrates the writing process by verbalizing their thoughts as they write. This approach allows the students to witness the cognitive processes that involved in writing and helping them understand how to organize and express their ideas clearly. By thinking aloud, the teacher provides insight into their decision making, which can guide the students in the writing endeavors. Now, the second one is to develop writing skills and introduce different writing genres through mini lessons. So this one it means that through the targeted mini lessons, the educator can expose the students to a variety of writing genres such as narratives, poetries, expository text, and persuasive writing. Each genre has a unique characteristics and purposes, and by exploring these differences, the students can learn to adopt their writing styles to suit various contexts. This exposure not only broadens their understanding of writing, but also encourages them to experiment with their own voice and creativity. Now, for the third role of the educator is to promote rereading as a strategy for students to remember what they are writing about. This one, it means that the educator will emphasize the importance of rereading as a strategy for enhancing comprehension and retention. By encouraging the students to revisit their work, the teacher will help them to identify the areas for improvement and reinforces their understanding of the content. Rereading also allows the student to reflect on the writing, leading to a more thoughtful revisions and a deeper connection to their ideas. For the fourth one is to develop a purpose of writing and writing for an audience. It means that the educator will guide the students in understanding the significance of writing with a clear purpose and knowing their audience. This focus on intention, it will help the students to recognize that writing is not just an academic exercise but a means of communication. By considering who will read their work, students become more invested in their writing, leading to a more meaningful and engaging compositions. And now for the last one is to demonstrate appropriate writing conventions. This one it means that the educator plays a crucial role in teaching students the conventions of writing, such as the grammar, the punctuation, and the structure. By modeling these conventions in their own writing and providing explicit instruction, the teacher equips the students with the essential tools that they need for effective communication. This foundation is very important for the students as they develop their writing skills and strive for clarity and coherence in their work. So in overall, the educator's role is really to create a collaborative and interactive learning environment where students can feel encouraged or encouragement to express themselves, take risks, and explore their creativity. By doing so, the teacher sets the stage for students to become confident, proficient, and lifelong writers. Now let's proceed in language experience method. observers will see. Alright, for this one, observers in a classroom utilizing the language experience method will witness a dynamic and interactive learning environment. They will see both students and the teacher that is engaged in thinking aloud about their experiences, which fosters a collaborative atmosphere and encourages a dialogue about the writing process. The teacher will model how to translate students' verbal expressions into written form, demonstrating the connection between spoken and written language. This practice not only validates students' ideas but also enhances their understanding of written conventions. Observers will note students actively rereading their dictated work, which reinforces their comprehension and aids in refining their writing. Now we have here four, all right, four observers that they will see, all right. Number one is students and teachers thinking aloud about their experience while writing about it. This one, it means that observers will see a vibrant interaction between the students and the teacher as they engage in discussions about their writing experiences. This collaborative thinking will encourage the students to articulate their thoughts and fosters a sense of community within the classroom where the ideas can be shared and explored collectively. Now, the second one is the teacher modeling the translation of student signs in to an appropriate written version. This one, it means that the teacher will demonstrate the process of translating the students' spoken ideas into written form. This modeling not only validates the students' contribution but also illustrates the connection between oral and written language. Observers will note how to participate or to practice enhances students' understanding of the writing process and encourages them to articulate their thoughts more clearly. And for the third one, students rereading what they have dictated. This one, it means that the observers will witness how students actively rereading their dictated work, a practice that reinforces their comprehension and allows for thoughtful revision. This engagement with their own writing will help students identify their strengths and areas for improvement and fostering a mindset of continuous learning and growth. And for the last one, number four, students document students documenting their language experience through pictures and written compositions. This one, it means that students will be seen creatively documenting their language experiences through a combination of pictures and written compositions. This multimodal approach allows for diverse expressions of understanding and creativity, demonstrating how students can convey their ideas through various forms of media. Observers will appreciate the richness of student expression and the ways in which they connect their learning to real life experiences. In overall, observers will gain insights into the effectiveness of the language experience method as they witness how students actively engage in the writing process, collaborating with peers, and expressing their ideas creatively. This environment not only supports the development of writing skills but also fosters a love for learning and self expression among the students.
Now let's proceed to how to record language experience. So, in recording the language experience of a student, first we have to ask students to sign what they are learning. Second, act as a scribe and write in English what is signed. Third, sign back to the students to make sure they agree with the story that was written down. Fourth, think aloud to demonstrate processes to students. Fifth, relate the complexity of the text to the language level of the students. Sixth, let the students contribute drawings or other art to enhance the writings. And lastly, use mini lessons to focus on specific language. So those are the steps on recording the language experiences.
Now, to measure what you have learned in today's discussion, we want you to answer these two essay questions. Read carefully the directions and answer it properly.